Today is April 14, Friday. I've been noticing my vlogs are mostly indoors, boring even for me, or less interesting. It's going to be a vlog about this one. So I did finish it yesterday. I'm going to return it. It's really overdue. It's been extended. It probably is one of the things that accumulated late payment fees with the library. I haven't heard back from that librarian. And to see if she'll remove those fees. I noticed the water is getting a tiny bit clearer now. At this time of year, it's going to get even cleaner. But it did come down a tiny bit from the last couple of days. We had a lot of wind, and then a couple of days ago, there was it yesterday or 2 days ago? There was about this much snow on the ground, so it made the trees that withstood the wind now have some weight, and they might have still not fallen, but they lost maybe a few more branches. Might have been places that lost power, but so this book here. Well, first I gotta praise Tom for doing a book like this. I mean, you know, it's too little, too late, and it's written in a way that has, you know, humor, very little empathy or altruism. You can tell his ability to reference the outside world, or to say, you know, we appropriately should feel shame or sadness or disgust about ourselves as a species. You know, it's not there, and he has a hard time grasping the concept of species. By just selecting individuals who did things, and the individuals that did things, they are really the norm. So he should be talking about the norm that allows these stupid things to have lasted so long, to poison their own kids, for example, and repeat the cycles of history that show how dumb we are. You know, he's not totally in reality with how bad things are when he believes he's talking about humans or our species. And I got to say that he really slacked off, and you can tell, you know, when he thanks people, you know, he admits, like most authors, that he was late with his deadlines. But really, I don't think there's an ending to this book. He didn't write an ending, because the ending would be where he would have shown his humanity, if he had any, like sentience and sapience, maybe above the norm, instead of just being the typical people primate that he talks about, the ones that he's made famous, or that were already famous, through the description of the series of events that their actions led to, that affected the species, but also the biosphere. And of course, he barely, if any, reflects the rest of the living creatures in the biosphere with the errors that we make. You know, it's pretty anthropocentric, but it's also his flaws to differentiate individuals and the species and himself. You know, he's not the most objective observer, but he did a lot of research, or others did, to show things that, let's say, was exactly who we were 100 years ago, but all this data put together would have been very hard 100 years ago compared to today with the internet, for example, and easier communication and collaborations between people that want to write a book for the sake of money, instead of just one or two people working on it in previous, let's say 100 years ago. But for me, Tom Phillips, if you're not happy with what I say about your book, and I might, before I return it, to read a passage of it, for example, as something that I think is worth people knowing about. But again, I would read this book again, and maybe I'd write a conclusion for it, and then send it to him. Say, hey, if you do a second publication of this, how about you actually conclude the book with a chapter that summarizes, if you are human, how you'd feel about all this, because you'd be freaking suffering from species alienation instead of just feeling good about yourself and moving on to the next project, and like not being any different than the norm that you talk about in there. Although I don't think, again, you can differentiate between the norm and the people that you claim were, by their inventions or decisions, entirely to blame. Like, that's not the way things happen. Stupidity is only bad for our species if it's collectively adopted. So again, you kind of make that point, but you don't make it in the right way, and you don't make it by being outraged like, an Homo sapien would be.